And well, this is a great segue into what's going on for live music, though, because live music's obviously very dire right now. So this is like almost like a middle ground for, okay, let's record the album. We'll see, at least record this. But live venues are kind of in jeopardy right now, right, Dawn?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this for the last, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You know,
6 months, man. Plus.
yeah, the start of this podcast was basically when COVID started. I mean, we didn't start COVID, but
Yeah, we didn't start the COVID. It was always burning.
Wasn't us. Wasn't me.
it wasn't me. So yeah, we checked out an NPR article which was titled "Financially Vulnerable Independent Music Venues Worry of Having to Sell." So one of the things that we've talked about on this pod a lot is the prospect of a lot of venues shutting down. We haven't really touched upon the angle of folks trying to jump off the ship before it sinks type of thing and just sell it off. So what was this? You guys read the article?
Yeah.
What was the gist?
Basically, there were a couple of people that were from the bigger market, like Live Nation-y type world, saying, yeah, we need some venture capitalists or Jeff Bezos to come in and buy up these indie venues to keep them going.
Literally, he said Bezos.
Yeah, and
wow.
in theory, I think that is sort of noble. In practice, it would be terrible for the music industry.
Totally.
You're corporatizing those indie venues, and the indie venues are the come up for so many bands that we all love, and we still see some of those bands play some of those venues to this day because they're just the places you want to see those bands. They're tiny, they're 1,000, they're 1,500 people, maybe less. Our favorite, local one, the State Theater in Portland, Maine. I don't know how many great shows I've seen in that small venue, from Queens of the Stone Age to Thrice to whoever, Atmosphere, etc. So I don't want that to be the State Theater presented by Amazon because now they're trying to sell stuff to me when I'm walking into the door. They're selling stuff while I'm in the bathroom. They're selling stuff everywhere, right? It's going to happen like that.
You're walking
You
out
don't
with
have to
groceries.
swipe to pee, right? Yeah, Whole Foods is at the kiosk. Like, no, that's my worry about this. If it goes that way, is all these little clubs lose their soul.
100%. Yeah, it takes the soul out of it 100%. Yeah, anytime you go to a Target or a Walmart and they have their own brand, you're like, oh man, they're capitalizing on the whole supply chain, So when it's an independent brand with a retailer, at least there's some separation there. But if it's like Live Nation or Amazon Concerts presents the Amazon band or whatever, you're like, God damn, this is like overkill right now. Like, yeah, it gets to be a little redundant over time. But there was a few episodes ago, I can't remember which one, when I lived in New York City and there was the Nokia Theater.
Yeah.
Right? And every time I went there, I was like, oh, man, this venue's like as clean as it gets. It's like, we love the dirty, dingy clubs, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
So, yeah. So there's that independent band, independent venue. That's the full circle of nerdery. But the corporate take on it, I mean, we kind of called it. So I really hope it doesn't happen. This is the one I don't want to get right. But, yeah, it would be really hard to digest if the State Theater becomes the Amazon Theater, because they would retrofit the whole thing. It wouldn't be old stadium seats. It would be like,
Or any of those cool little dingy clubs that you've been to across the country. I know you've talked about those ones, like was it Belly Up in San Diego?
Yep.
That's independent, right?
Totally. Yeah.
I mean that gets corporatized and changed, and it
Mhm.
becomes Belly Up presented by Spotify. And I
Yeah.
don't know if I want that. And then they're gonna force the bands on you that they want to promote. And you see that happening now with podcasts with Spotify, right? They're
Yep.
forcing Michelle Obama on everybody, which is
Yeah.
cool. We're not going to get political here, but it doesn't. It squashes the little guy that's trying to make their way to the top, right? And that's what we are. We want. Hey, I would love for them to promote one of our tweets. How cool would that be? Like, I don't even know. I haven't unlocked it yet. I've been trying. I've been trolling. I've been saying nice things. None of it works. But it's just Michelle Obama every day.
Well, it's like Joe Budden, who has a Spotify deal. It's ending. He made a joke on his last episode where he's like, apparently you got to be the president's wife for your own company to promote you. They're like a top-rated podcast. But what was interesting about the article is they said that they would go with themes. So like the Amazon Country Bar or something.
No.
And it's like, how would you... There's certain geographies where that would be clear cut, but then others, they probably wouldn't even go down that road. They just have a generic the Amazon Rock Bar.
Or they'd buy all of them up in that city, and one would be the rock bar, and one would be the hip hop place, and one would be the country place. Like, we have a couple of small venues in Portland. I could totally see those being. The State Theater is the country one, because we probably would sell that pretty well, or the rock one, depending on what you look at for numbers. And then making one hip hop and the other smaller one maybe something different. So, yeah, I don't want that. That sounds terrible.
For good comparison, this reminds me of like Disney World, right? Where they have like the themed like sections of the plaza.
Is that Epcot Center?
Epcot
That's
Center, exactly.
where I was going.
Yeah, it's like, okay, this is your Spanish area or this is your European area, and it's like very obviously artificial. That makes sense for that, kind of environment. But if that becomes that for music, like, man, it's going to be pretty dire. That'll be hard, because if you're in it for the real true roots of music, it's just not how it goes down,
Well, then you don't find those bands that you grew up with. Like, I feel bad for people growing up with music right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, because the times right now are difficult. But even before that, it's all, what the handful of radio stations that they hear, and or they've got to find it themselves. They're not going to a show and seeing the opener and liking the opener and becoming a fan of them, and then going down that rabbit hole at the record store like we did. So I feel bad for that. Like, that was a really fun way to discover music. And if it continues to be curated the way that it's being curated, with corporate interests involved, we're going to get force-fed stuff we don't want.
The other reality is it was a promoter that was interviewed in the article, and he's basically just saying, like, this is another way for greedy hands to get in a bigger pool and a different pool. And what would happen with this is you'd have an extension of the same Walmart, Amazon, Spotify practices, who the creators get screwed. So these big boys are going to get paid. And again, it gets back to the Walmart example, where like you go into Walmart knowing you're getting screwed, but there's more eyeballs on you, so you think it helps your greater. It's a longer play.
Or Ticketmaster, right?
Or Ticketmaster.
The Ticketmaster venue.
Yeah, same thing. So if I'm Queens of the Stone Age and I'm heading to Maine and I'm going to the 1,500 cap Amazon State Theater, and that's the only possible place I could play in Maine, it's a moral thing of like, do you just say no? I don't want to give them money, but I screw my fans over? I don't know. It's a tough one.
I think, it gets volleyed back to the artist as to how they want to handle that. And obviously, COVID aside, it's going to be difficult for them to figure out where to go and how to make their money. That's where they make their money right now. And now, if this goes this way, where the big box store buys all these venues, they're going to get cut out of that too. And it's like, we're never going to have anybody want to be a musician again. And I don't want to live in that world, man. That sounds terrible.
The Queens of the Stone Age example is fantastic, because when Queens of the Stone Age went from club to theater, it's a natural progression. But they stayed at the theater level for so long. So when they rolled through LA, they were, on I think 2 album cycles ago, they played like the Forum, which is huge. But in San Diego, they played a dirty, dingy theater. And I was like, sweet, I'm so happy I live in San Diego. So they clearly had like that incentive, like, hey, like, you guys are big enough to play arenas if you really want to. But I know you guys like really like the theaters. So they're kind of in that divide. So for the LA, the major market, they're like, all right, screw it, we'll do the giant arena.
Yeah.
So that kind of reminds me of that, because it's like, oh, you have that pressure because you have to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
You fill more seats, you make more money, or you say yes to Amazon's, arena, and they pay you twofold. It's like playing a casino or something like that. You're like, I don't want to be the band that plays casinos, but
right.
I gotta make this work. So
they gotta make the money there. They're trying to keep food on the table too, and a roof over their head. And it's, the big artists, this isn't gonna bother them. Even if they go independent, this isn't gonna bother them, because those venues will shell money out to have them in the big venues when those are open again, right? Like Taylor Swift's not gonna be hurting for this. Drake's not gonna be in trouble. But it's those mid-level to down people coming up that this is just gonna step on them and keep it really hard for them to break on through to that second level or that higher level that they should be getting to.
It does make you appreciate, like last episode we had Beer Punks, Justin on, and a lot of those venues are outdoors, which a lot of them it's at like fairgrounds and stuff where, I think those type of venues, the Bezos and the Spotify's would stay away from. But I think where it would be interesting is like, who was it? Pennywise or NoFX, where they wanted to keep the prices low.
No effects.
Yeah. Yep.
That'd be tough to do under like
Wouldn't be up
at
to them. anymore.
Bezos's ballroom venue
Yeah, it
or
wouldn't
whatever.
be up to them, right?
So I think you'd see more of the outdoor stuff, and you'd rely on the independent promoters and stuff.
Or basement shows,
Basement shows.
VFW halls, stuff like that we've talked about in the past with different genres and different bands getting their come up that way. It'd be really underground, like legitimately underground again.
Yeah, I think that's what this showcases really is what we talked about a few episodes ago as well, which is the Bandcamp version of this kind of industry need, which is like, hey, if you want to keep things the way they were or the way the fans really want, there needs to be a platform to be conducive for this. So someone, maybe it'll be Nerdery Productions, that has some kind of way to acquire these venues and not have it go to Ticketmaster and Live Nation, where we still have that layer of independence and keep things real. And obviously we'll have to adapt with the situations that are going to be going forward with COVID and all the regulations that fall into place. But if not, yeah, I mean, they'll be swallowed up in a heartbeat. So there needs to be someone that comes in that rivals that, and there'll be that crowd that understands what we're talking about, which is great because people that love music are in that realm. We're in that category. So
Yeah, I mean, it could force the return of DIY.
yeah,
Discord records, just completely do-it-yourself type of stuff, and say fuck you to the big boys and outdoor pop-up shows. I'm here for that.
Yeah, are we I mean, that was big, 40 years ago?
Yeah.
Are we on the verge of another one of those times? Because we very well could be. Are we going to be the old guys in the pit? Like, shit, we might be.
history does repeat itself. You never know.
It really does. That was interesting.
It makes me worried, though.
Oh,
I mean,
me
that's
too.
Totally.
that's the take. That's the punchline for me. It's like Amazon's market cap and their stock price. It's like they don't need anything else. Stay out of everything else.
I could see Apple getting into this.
Yep.
They haven't decided to really wade into the podcast world the way Spotify has. Couldn't you see Apple saying, "Yep, it's the Apple Theater now at all these different places"? And I have an iPhone. I have a Mac. I use the product. I don't want that. I don't want them to be the gatekeepers of everything I do.
No, totally. I mean, for physical goods in LA, there's the Dolby Theater, and they outfitted it with Dolby, equipment, obviously. So it was like the best of the best for their, supply. But that doesn't always transcend. I mean, Spotify, the Amazon Theater, like, what does that mean? They just have, they undercut wholesale on everything that's going into the venue. Like,
Good craft beer will be in there, right?
yeah.
I got a prediction.
Okay.
Oh shoot.
Spotify scoops up venues. Then they have the equivalent of Spotify Records, where they exclusively stream.
Yep.
They will only let their artists tour through the venues, so it's a monopoly play.
It's like ESPN was with 10 years ago when they only let ESPN personalities on ESPN podcasts. Like they didn't venture out of the bubble. Everything will stay in the Spotify bubble. That's what you're saying? That makes sense. Amazon could do that too.
That's a great prediction because that's basically the new Ticketmaster and Live Nation, right? They own everything.
They just become a gatekeeper.
I don't know how they continue to spend all this money.
Oh, it's bananas.
Like we talked about it 2 weeks ago. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't want any of these places to close. So and there's some people in reading the article that have levied their houses against their venues. I don't want those people to be homeless because their venues went under because Congress didn't give them any relief. But yeah, that I don't necessarily want Spotify to be the reason that, or the people that allow me to see what music I want to see.
It's crazy. Spotify, in the public eye, is worth $52 billion.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And they're not profitable.
They've never turned an annual profit.
How
From
long,
what we read a couple weeks ago.
How long have they been a company?
Oh, Jesus.
7-8 years. maybe?
7-8 years.
Not longer than that.
Yeah.
10?
Oh, you think so? Yeah.
Yeah, I think around. I remember they were like the first streaming music I remember people talking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 8 or 9 years probably, yeah.
That's
And they've
insanity.
obviously become this massive destination for a bunch of different people. I mean,